Hey folks, this is a kind of a continuation of this Word tutorial, Module 1. It's listed right here. So previously I created a video step by step of completing the first section, 1.1. So Chapter 1, Section 1. And we completed the Brooks letter and the Gomez envelope. I went pretty slowly in there. This time, this video is going to do that third item that you're responsible for. And that is going to be what's called the vinyl flyer. So let's come back here to our class. And so again, we're working on Word Tutorial Module 1. And if I go to the book, I'm on page WD30. It's going to look like this. I'm not going to show you every single step on my screen, but you should, as I had mentioned before, be looking at the green boxes in these two pictures at the beginning of the pages, or beginning of the section on pages WD30 and WD31. Okay, so just notice, some of the different sorts of elements that they're going to be talking about here. And then, as before, we're focused on the tan-colored boxes. Everything outside of the tan-colored boxes is more background information, explanations as to why, those sorts of things. So we're going to open up the flyer document. So on the ribbon it says to click the File tab to open the Backstage view. Okay, so at this point I think I'm going to kind of cut away from the book and just kind of more focus on my, my document itself. So I'm going to move this off the screen. And so on page 32 it says click the File tab to open Backstage view. So to basically get you caught back up here, we're going to need to open up Word. And so just a reminder, if you don't know where Word is at, you can type in the search here at the very bottom of your screen. Click on Word, and we're going to click on, so let's just say that I'm looking at this screen here. Let's say if you have a blank document, this will kind of flow a little bit more closely with the book. But if you clicked on File to get the Backstage view, they're talking about clicking the Open button. So if your version looks similar to mine, and let me kind of eliminate some of this stuff. So when I open up Word, if I notice over here on the left, if this is more along the lines of what you're seeing, if you click Open, you pretty much go to the same sort of place. And we want to click on Browse. And we're looking for the location of our files. So remember, under the Quick Access on the left-hand side, we created a folder for our stuff. And they're asking us in the book to go to Word 1 and click on the module. And they're giving us a starter data file here that's called vinyl.docx. And if you double click on that, it brings this file to the front here. Okay, so that gives you a starter data file. So they've typed in some of the words for you. Now on your screen you might see a yellow bar that shows up like this. This yellow bar is really designed to help you do less dangerous things. So if somebody sends you a Microsoft Word file, it's possible that it might have things in it that you should be concerned about. So this is like your last hope if somebody sent you a virus-infected file of some sort. Lots of folks use Microsoft Word, so it becomes a bit of a target. And so that's what this little yellow bar is. You're going to see this on most Microsoft Word, most Microsoft Excel documents, and you can see it, but it's not going to be able to make changes on your computer this way. You won't be able to make changes to this document unless you click the Enable Editing. And once you click the Enable Editing button, the yellow bar goes away, your ribbon shows up, and now you're back to kind of a normal file. So we need to save this. So I'm at the bottom of the page there. Step 1, or step 2 says to click Save As. So click on File and click on Save As. We want to browse. If you want to come over here and begin to figure out how to use this other side. That's great, but in the beginning, I think it's way better to be completely certain about where things are going. So I'm going back to my quick access. I'm going to find word 1. I'm going to find the module, and this time I'm going to call this one MRH, because that's my name, Vinyl Flyer. MRH Vinyl Flyer. And I'm putting it into the module itself, which is where all the other files that I previously created should be. This just makes organization much, much simpler for you. Okay, so I have my file here, and if I skip over to page WD33 and I go down towards the bottom, it says to verify things, make sure you're in print layout, and that all that is good. So remember, print layout is down here on the status bar. And if we hover over top of these things, you may actually be able to see on my screen where it says web layout. Print layout is the center one, and then the very far left is the reading mode. Okay? And then it makes some suggestions about the zoom levels. Feel free to do whatever it is that you want, but just remember there's a zoom feature, a magnification feature down at the bottom. Zoom kind of is a bad word to use. So flip over to page WD34 and you'll see an image of what your screen should be looking like. And it gives you a little bit of a sense in those green boxes what you should be doing. So let me just pull this over so you can kind of see this. So that's what it kind of looks like. So pay attention to those little green boxes, in this one especially, because I think it'll be very helpful for you. Okay, going back to my document here. All right, so there it is. So that's what we've got. And if I scooch down to the bottom of that screen, it talks about using the spelling and grammar task panes. It says to go to the File tab and then click on Options. So if we go to our screen and we click on File, the Backstage view opens, and then down at the very, very bottom on the left-hand side, you see there's an Options button. So click on the Options button, and this is going to take you to a place where you can do lots of different things. Okay, general display, proofing. So this is probably where we want to be. Let's go check the instructions. So skip over to the next page, page 35, WD 35. Click on proofing, which is what I've done on my screen. And you can see it right there. And then it says, note the 4 selected options in the when correcting spelling and grammar in Word. And so that's this section here. And there's 4 items that are checked. The first 3 options tell you that Word's going to check for misspellings, grammatical errors, blah, blah, blah. You can read this. The 4th option, check grammar with spelling. Actually, it says check grammar and refinements in the editor pane. If you want to check only the spelling, you could deselect this particular box. Okay, you know, I would recommend that you not get too crazy about using these checkboxes at this point, mostly because you don't really know what you're doing, and if you make some changes now, it may create some downstream issues for you. So I'll let you kind of decide how you want to work with this, but just remember, if you make these changes, how to get back to them. So I'm going back to the book here on page 35, and gives you, you know, kind of an idea of what this is supposed to be looking like. And you'll probably notice that there's a, you know, slight difference between what's listed in the picture in the book and what is actually on your screen, and that's mostly just due to different versions and updates of Word. I'm going to cancel out of this. So basically that's just where you would go. I'm going to skip steps 5 and 6. I'm not going to do anything else there. I'm going down to check the Vinyl Flyer for document for spelling and grammatical errors. So it says to press the Control and the Home key if you have those keys on your computer. Great. If not, go all the way to the top of your document to the left of the capital letter R for Ready. And on the ribbon, go to the Review tab. And in the Proofing group, So look at all the different names here in the groups. In the proofing group, we want to make sure you find proofing and then click on spelling and grammar. And it doesn't really give you that though. It's giving me a check the document. I'm just going to click the check the document and it's done its work. Okay. So that's pretty much generally how this is going to be working. Again, everyone's going to have a slightly different look and feel for this. So don't get too crazy about it. It's not that big of a deal. So if we click on the spelling pane and let's just see here. So the spelling pane may not actually be an option for some of you. Mine's latest version of this flavor of Microsoft Office, so I'm not actually even seeing that at this point. So it's not that big of a deal because really all we're trying to do is we're trying to work on these squiggly areas in your document. So if we look at that first line, ready to get rid of your old Ricard collection, if we right click on it, you can see that the spelling option shows up when I right click, and it gives me some options here. And if I choose the record, that was the first option, that's basically what we're trying to do. So we're trying to get rid of all these little underlined areas. So if I right click on contact, it gives us contact, and I'm looking through the rest of the document and it doesn't look like there's anything else. Okay, so that's kind of what we're trying to do here. I think the normal way that people would work with this is to right click on any of those misspelled words. So let me purposefully misspell something here and just see what happens. And if I go back and I check the document, you can see now I can get the editor to show up, but it's much simpler to just come over here and right click on things to see if you can make your changes this direction. So we don't want any of this stuff. It can't even come up with a possible selection for us here. So we're just going to need to go in and change that ourselves. So that's kind of the editing process. I do not believe that Microsoft Word is stellar with spelling and grammar checking. So if you become dependent on that feature, I would suggest that you just be careful. So if that's what you're relying on, sometimes I've had mixed success with this. Okay, so all my underlines are gone, and I'm looking back on page 37, WD 37, and I'm going to skip okay, I think I'm going to skip everything else on that page and just make sure that we've got all of the proper case taken care of. So if you look at the very bottom of page 37, you'll see it says to proofread, review the document for any other errors that didn't get caught. And what you'll notice here is that in your document, in the second line, Via Rio Records is actually the name of the company. So records should be capitalized there as well. Now I'm noticing one other thing down here on the second to the last line where this R is actually underlined, and it's, if I right click on it, it says change the subject verb disagreement and make it is. No collection is too small or too large. Okay, so all that looks pretty good at this point. I'm going to go back to our document and flip over to page 38. We're going to change the page orientation. And right now, we want to make sure that it's in landscape orientation. So basically, we want it to be wider than it is tall. So if we go to the Layout tab at the very top of your screen and click on it, so that takes us to the commands within the Layout tab. And if we click on the orientation button, second one on my screen from the top left, and click on landscape, you can see that it kind of flips that around. The best way to do this is to change the magnification and then go mess around with the orientation. So you can see it's taller than it is wide in this way. The book wants us to be in landscape format, which is going to look like this. So that's where that magnifier can kind of come into play for you there. Okay, so going back to page 38, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the page setup group and we're going to change the margins in step 4. So if we come back to Layout tab and we click on Margins and we click on Narrow Margins, and you can kind of see what the dimensions are going to be there. It's going to shrink them down just a little bit from what you had to start with. And you can look at the image in the book and it's going to give you a little bit of information about those margins. Be careful with getting margins too close to the edge of the paper, because sometimes if you're printing these things, different printers have different capabilities. So if you have a really cheap printer, it may only print to about 1 inch from the side of the page. If you've got a more expensive one, it probably gets a little bit closer. You cannot print all the way to the edge of the page. That's called an edge bleed, and the only way you can do that is to go to a printer, like a professional printer, and they can do that. You'll see that on really slick kind of publications that you might receive in the mail. Okay, so we're going to go over to page 39, so WD 39, and this time we want to, it says click on the ribbon so that the Home tab is the active thing. The active tab, so click on Home and make sure that's the active tab, and then it talks about changing zoom level if that's appropriate. Make sure that the insertion point is at the very top of your document to the left of Ready. Press and hold the Shift key and then click to the right of the second paragraph. So this is step 4. Press and hold the Shift key and click to the right of the second paragraph marker at the end of the second paragraph of text. Excuse me. Whew. So if I press the Shift key and hold it, and I click to the right of the P, backwards P, on vinyl, at the end of vinyl, notice all the things that I've selected there. So it's the entire first 2 lines. So let's go back and look at those instructions then. So that was step 4. So I have 2 lines selected. Okay, we want to change the font. Okay, so in step 5 it talks about in the font group on the Home tab, click the font arrow. You've got some different types of fonts. So fonts are referred to as the name of the style. The size of the font is the number to the right of that. There's lots of different fonts. Sometimes people try to get creative with this. There are better fonts than others. Arial is probably the most common Windows font, but anyway, just kind of keep an eye on those sorts of things. So what they're talking about is to do this. If you go to Home, you click on the Calibri, and if you hover over top of this, you can begin to see all those different things changing in the background. And there's theme fonts and there's recently used fonts, and yours are going to look a little bit different than mine. So if we go back to the instructions and flip over to page 41, when you're finished, the step 7 says when you're finished reviewing, they want you to click Arial. Okay, so if we come back to our document here and click on, make sure you have those first 2 lines selected, and they want us to actually pick Arial, just Arial, normal Arial, nothing else. And then they want us to change the font size from 11 to 22. I don't really care what size you make it, but this document needs to fit on 1 page, so kind of following these instructions might actually make some sense. So now it says to select the 3 paragraphs of text below the photo, format them in the Arial font, and then increase those sizes to 22. So I'm going to do the same thing down here on those last 3 lines, and there's the last 3 lines. I'm going to change those to Arial, and notice it's one of my recently used fonts. I'm going to change it to size 22, and we're going to click somewhere in a blank area to deselect all that text. Okay, so in some of this, I don't really care what you do with it. I really want, most importantly, you to know that you know how to change the fonts, that you know how to change the sizes, that you know how to keep things on one page, those sorts of things. So feel free to use some flexibility here. Again, I'm not particularly concerned about colors and fonts as much as I am the fact that you know that they're there. Okay, so in the font group on the Home tab, step 1, scroll up, display the beginning of the document, and click in the selection bar to the left of the second paragraph. Okay, left of the second paragraph. Selection bar refers to this area to the left of Via Rea Records. And if I click that, it selects that whole line. And in the font group in the Home tab, it says to click the, in the Home tab, it says to click the Text Effects and Typography button, and that's the blue, kind of the hollowed out letter A. It's highlighted in blue on my screen. And when I click that little arrow just to the right of it, it gives me a bit of a gallery. It's saying in the middle of the bottom row, they want you to try to find that one. And it tells you it's a fill blue, accent color 5, outline white, background color 1, hard shadow blue, accent color 5. There's all sorts of things that happen as a result of clicking that. So I'm going to pick that, and I'm not going to noodle around with everything else. Here's the picture of what you should have just seen on page 42. In the bottom row, click the blue letter A, blah, blah, blah. It's giving you all that stuff with what you should have chosen. So now we're going to increase that font size for that second line in our document. So make sure that second line is highlighted, and instead of being 22, we're going to make it 24. And then we're going to make it maybe just a little bit bigger. Just to the right of that, they're trying to show you that there's some bigger and smaller, or larger and smaller font sizes here. So you can just make it a little bit larger. You could have easily pulled the drop down and done it that way as well. Okay. We are at the bottom of page 42, and we want to apply a font color and bold it. So we want to select the 3rd and 4th paragraphs of text. So the 3rd and the 4th paragraphs of text, not the picture, but the text. And this time, so we'll come to your home, no collection is too small or too large. And in the font group on the Home tab, click the font color button arrow. So the font color button arrow is going to be this on my screen. It's red, and there's a drop down. And you can kind of see that there's a bunch of choices there. The options are, basically the basic sorts of colors. And let's see here. If you skip over to the next page, they want you to just move your mouse around, and they want you to try to find the second from the right in the top row. Okay, so we come back here and we go to the red, and we want the second from the right in the top row, which is the blue accent 5. And I click that, it changes it. And if you look at your book again, middle of page 43, there's a picture with how this should be looking at this point. So use that waypoint just to make sure that things are going okay. Next thing we want to do to that is we're going to bold those last 2 lines there. So the reason why my screen keeps blinking on and off with the highlights is because I'm looking at my book on a separate monitor. So don't let that confuse you. It's just a problem with me using a second monitor. Okay, so page 44, there's some talk about aligning text. Just look at some of the differences there. Most of the time you're going to be using left aligned or center aligned. Those are your go-tos most likely. So they want you to press, so make sure your document is on the page here. And they want you to press the control key down and hold it, and then the letter A. And when you do that, it highlights everything on your screen. This little keyboard trick works in nearly every piece of software there is on your computer. Now they want you to find the center button. So up in the paragraph group, you'll notice that there's a bunch of different alignment options. Align left, center, align right, justify, and there might be some other options on your screen. We want to center ours. And so that puts it kind of symmetrically placed within the center of your screen. And on page 45, we're going to add shading and a paragraph border. So it says to select just the first line of text on your screen. And we want to go to the Home tab, find the paragraph group. Okay, so this is the paragraph group, and this is the border button here. When you click on that, you're going to get a whole bunch of options there. So take a quick look at your book, and there's an image there that's going to show up. And step 3 on page 46, if you flip over, tells you to, once you're looking at these things, they want you to find the outside borders button. So click that. Don't click anywhere else on your screen at this point. Make sure that that whole thing is highlighted, and you can see that there's a border that goes all the way across the page there. So then step 4 says in the paragraph group, find the shading button arrow. Okay, so it kind of looks, I don't know what it looks like. It looks like a palette of some sort. If you click that arrow, you get some options. So in the bottom row in the theme colors, move the pointer over to the square in the 5th column from the left. 5th column from the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And blue accent 1 darker 50% is what we're looking for. So that's darker 25. That's darker 50%. So it's going to be the last one in the column there. So it looks kind of terrible, but that's okay because we're going to adjust that. And mine's a little bit, maybe a little bit darker. But what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called a font reversal. So we're going to make the font into a different color. Remember, this is all still selected. And this time we're going to change the font color from black, or dark gray or black, to white. So if we come up to the font color button, so click on our screen, font color, and this time we're going to choose theme color of white. So that's called a font reversal, and that allows you to be able to read things much, much better. So page 47, step 9, says to click a blank area of the document so that you can kind of see how this is going to look. So if I come back here and I click a blank area of the document, my highlighting goes away, and that's kind of what it's looking like at this point. So to add balance to the flyer, we're probably going to do something similar to that last line, the contact Leo Baronoff. So this is a trick that I use a lot. So I'd pay attention to this one and use this one a bunch. So if you highlight that first line, just like on my screen, you're only going to highlight the text, and that blue bars are just going to be kind of hanging out there. But now what we want to do is we want to use what's called the Format Painter. So it's kind of like a paintbrush, and since we highlighted that first line, that's going to be our paint bucket. If we click on the Format Painter, and then we come down here to our document, you can see that my mouse, my insertion point, turned into a little tiny paintbrush. Well, this time we just want to click on that last line to make it the same as the first. And let me do that one more time for you so you can kind of see. So to highlight the first line of text. I'm going to dip my paintbrush, my format painter, into that paint bucket. Then I'm going to come down here. So you can click off to the side to highlight the whole entire line, or you could do it manually like that. Same result will occur. I'd practice those format paintings because it took all of the changes, formatting changes that we did from that first line, and it put them into the last line, so you didn't have to go in there and click about 15 times to make all those changes. So I'm at the bottom of page 48 now, so I'm going to increase the paragraph spacing below the first paragraph and above the last paragraph. Okay, so step one says click anywhere. You don't have to highlight it this time. Just click anywhere in that first paragraph, and then once you have your insertion point in there somewhere, mine's clicking in there somewhere, it says to click the layout tab in the ribbon, and then find the paragraph group, which is right here. It's different than the paragraph group in the home tab. And then find the after box, which is going to be right there. And we want to type, instead of having 8 point, we're just going to type 42. So these numbers are not going to mean a whole lot to you, but watch what happens on my screen when I press the enter key after typing 42. So you can see in this location there's a bunch more white space that you can add into that area. So after, so we put our insertion point, and then after the end of that paragraph, it put that extra 42 spacing in there. So now it says to go to the last paragraph, and this time instead of doing after, we're going to do before. We're up in the paragraph group again, and this time we're going to before, and it says to keep things consistent, we're going to use the same number, but this time it's going to go before, and I'm going to press the enter key. And so now the line beneath the top one, it's got 42 point spacing there, and the line above the last one is going to be 42 point spacing. So if I zoom the other direction, you can kind of see in this area I've got a bunch of white space, but don't fret, we're going to make this picture a little bit bigger. Okay, so here we are, back on page 49, excuse me. We want to delete the current photo and insert a new one. Okay, so we're going to click on the photo one time. And you'll know that you have it selected because you get these little drag handles off to the corners and in the middle. Here's one little tip. I would never resize a picture unless you really know what you're doing with anything other than the corners. If you use the corners, it's going to preserve the aspect ratio. In other words, people won't get really wide or really tall. So if you click on the center drag handles here, that's when you begin to change the aspect ratio. That's why people's pictures get really messed up, because they're dragging them with the wrong drag handles. Okay, so there's a couple different ways you can do this, but they're suggesting that we delete the picture by pressing the delete key. And then once you have it deleted, we're going to go up to the Insert tab in the ribbon, and we're going to click on Pictures. And guess where the picture is that we're going to use? Go back up to your quick access, find your folder of your stuff for this course, find the Word 1 module folder, and look, there's the new picture that we're going to choose. And when you click that, this picture is gigantic, and that happens a lot. So don't get too concerned about that. We're going to resize this picture to make it kind of fit within the one-page document that we've got. So if you click on the picture, you can notice now this really large picture has drag handles on it. So you could easily like monkey around with it this way, which is what many of you would do, and it's what I would do. But they're actually going to give you the sizing that you need. And if you notice, there's a new tab at the top, and it's called the Picture Format tab. And up here on the right, there's a size, which is what we're going to use. They're going to actually give us the sizes we should use for this. And so what we're trying to do, the photo decreases if you click the little down arrows. You know how to use these. Where's my mouse at? Okay, so these little arrows up here allow you to change sizes um, for your picture. And don't get too caught up with that kind of stuff. It's not very often that you're going to be, um, given precise sizes and things like that. But what I want you to do with your image is I want you to make it fit. So I'm going to use a corner drag handle and just make sure all my stuff fits on one page. I don't need you to be perfect with this. I want you to be able to practice the skills that you're going to use in real life. So while it's pretty handy that they're going to give you the sizes for the document, make it fit. And you may need to go back and change this later on. Okay? All right, so we're going to add a style. So at the bottom of page 51, we're going to add style to your photo. And you can notice at the top of my screen that there's some picture styles that are listed up here. And there's also an arrow with a line above it that gives more styles. And if I hover over top of those, find a style that you like. They're going to give you a style that they want you to pick. I don't really care. Just find one that you like. All right, so I chose mine, and look what happened. It pushed my stuff down a little bit, and it doesn't fit on one page. So I'm going to need to basically shrink that picture just a little bit more to make everything fit on one page. That's probably the most important part of this assignment, is just making sure that everything fits on one page. Okay. Oh, and if you have a really wide monitor and you're on the picture format, if you have a really large screen, some of this might show up a little bit differently. In fact, all of these things might actually appear on your monitor if you've got a super wide monitor. And if you're looking at page 52, you're going to see they're asking you to use a drop shadow rectangle, blah, blah, blah. I think styling pictures is good because it prevents them from appearing flat on the page. So it gives them a little bit of depth. Okay, on page 53, I want to show you this page. It talks about using help. I would really discourage you. I know this is a class on Microsoft Office. I would discourage you from using their built-in help. I find it not helpful at all. Well, maybe not at all. That's probably too strong of a word, but I don't find it very useful at all. It's much easier for you to be able to find a good source on YouTube or go to Microsoft's website directly and get used to working with things that way. I think you'll get better answers, better help. It'll make more sense to you, and life will be a little bit more pleasant for you. So that's the end of that. Let me just give you a quick look ahead to the review assignment. This flyer is completed at this point, so it's going to look a little bit like what they have in their image here. You can also see what mine looks like. The last thing that I do is I typically zoom out, not so that I can read it, but that's kind of what it should look like. Again, your picture style might be a lot different than mine, but everything else should be pretty much the same. Again, I'm not interested in colors, although I want you to know how to change the colors. I want your documents to look nice. I want you to be able to know how to change the font colors so that they're more readable with a dark background, much like in this photo. So again, if you want to go off the rails, that's fine. Do something, make it look nice. No seizures, please. So using this little slider gives you the chance to really begin to check your work a little bit, just to make sure it looks okay. All right, so coming back here, the look ahead is, come on, page, load. Okay. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Give me a second. Okay, I'm not really sure what was going on there, but my book wouldn't display. So last part of that assignment is on 54. There's no steps for you to complete there. And then the look ahead, like I said before, is on page 55. This is the review assignment. So I'm not going to give you a step-by-step on this, but I do just want to give you a quick look ahead. Um, this the review assignments are going to do something quite similar. What we did. So there's a flyer document that you're going to create, and then there's also a letter and an envelope. Okay, and read through these steps. And the idea here is that if you get stuck on step one, if you go to the beginning of our module, so let's say back on page WD 10, they might have described how to save, excuse me, how to save a document. And in step two, there's a description about typing FEBR and pressing enter and using autocomplete. So this is, again, it's literally a review. It is not the exact same document, but it is nearly the same document with different things in it. So you will have to go through and type these things out again. And the review assignment, all three documents together are worth 50 points. So it's really necessary for you to complete the review assignments and to submit them just like we have the tutorial. So if you need a little bit more time and you get stuck, just be sure to reach out to me. The review assignment goes from pages WD 55 to the middle of page WD 56. So there's 29 steps. Just take a look at those, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. But that's kind of the look ahead. So once you have your flyer all ready, make sure it's saved, and then you can upload that into our class. So I'll go back to our class, and so if you want to upload this assignment, you can come in here, and I guess I need to go to the student view first. Sorry about that. Let me get into student view, and here's our Word tutorial module 1, what we just finished. If we click on submit assignment, there were 3 files, and if I click on choose file and I come over here to quick access and I find my Word 1 and I click on module, I know which ones I needed to do. So there's the MRH Brooks letter. It's at the very top. I got my initials on it. I'm going to choose open, and now you can notice that it's listed right there, MRH Brooks letter. I'm going to add another file. It says no file chosen. I'm going to choose a file, and this time I'm going to get the Gomez envelope. So now I've got the letter and the envelope. I'm going to add another file, click choose, click the flyer, and say, wow, Matt, this is amazing stuff. You must love your job and all of your students very, very much. Okay, so there we go. And then, last but not least, and this is probably the most important step that many of you will forget, is to submit the assignment. Now, if you notice, before I click that, there's Studio, there's Google Drive, there's Office 365. There's some other ways that you could submit your assignments, but at this point, I'd recommend that you keep it kind of simple. If you're comfortable using Google Drive or Office 365, that's great. But you will have had to have stored it in one of those 2 locations. You don't need to submit a comment with your file, but once I click submit, dun, 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 dun. Hey. Okay, so let me show you what happens on my end of things. I'm going to go in and get into my mail, and you can see here, and I'm kind of showing you this so that you know what happens on my end of things. Test student, so that's what I was just working with, has just turned in a submission. Upload 3 files. Okay, so that's what I get when you submit something, and then hopefully I'll go back in and I'll grade that right away. So I'm going to leave the student view now. I'm going to go back in as a faculty member, and if I go to the speed grader for these assignments, the test student is the student that I'm working with now, So if I click on the MRH Brooks letter, I had kind of wrecked my document, and I'm going to add a comment on this. This is terrible. I won't do that to you, but that's a comment that I'm placing inline on the file itself. And then here's another one that you might actually see. This is amazing. And then last but not least, here's the flyer. Wow, what a beautiful image. Okay, and then I'll give Mr. Test 50, and then you can kind of see this submission comment. That's what I typed in there, and I'm going to submit that. And again, all this is fake, but this is what you're going to see potentially on your end of things. So there you have it. And if you have questions, let me know. We will definitely be doing a little bit more of this sort of thing as time goes by. So let me know if I can create videos that'll be helpful to you in showing you how to do some stuff. All right, thanks.